Expo 67, World's Fair in Canada to commemorate 100th anniversary of the Confederation American Basketball League is formed. Elvis Presley and Priscilla Bolvio got married in Las Vegas. The year is 1967, and this was the final year for the AMC Marlin. Really cool story. So I saw this car when I was at a car show, and I was like, oh my gosh, there it is. Like, these are so rare. But before getting into all of it, I'm Jay. Welcome to What It's Like, the automotive channel that digs different cars never get talked about. We cover the classics, vintage, some appliances. We love the orphan cars or car brands that are no longer around. If that sounds like a channel that you will totally dig, subscribe and hit the bell icon next to it to never miss a video. This is the only 1967 AMC Marlin I have ever seen in the wild. I saw it earlier this year when I was cruising in my 52 Chevy 1-ton truck. He was coming the other way, and it took everything within me not to stop and say, hey man, could I do an episode on your car? I ended up seeing him at an AMC show, and that's how we got the opportunity to do this. 1967 AMC model lineup. But before we do that, a little bit of background. George Robney was at the helm of ANC from when George Mason died suddenly in 1954. Robney would cancel Nash and Hudson in 1957 and go all in on Rambler. And the reason was Robney thought the only way to compete with the big three was to make a smaller size econo car. This strategy didn't catch on at first and lost money in 56 and 57. AMC came really close to ending up in Louis Wolfson's portfolio. He was a corporate raider. Robney was able to block him. Sales exploded in 1958. AMC was the only car company in the USA to show an increase of sales during the 1958 recession, moving from 13th to 7th worldwide. The Associated Press named Robney Man of Industry for 4 consecutive years, 1958 to 1961. Robney resigned from AMC in 1962 to become governor of Michigan. Robney's successor, Roy Abernethy, was hired in 1954. He would come up in sales. He worked on AMC Sales and Distribution Network. He realized promotion and advertising were nothing without a good dealership network. Fast forward to 1962, AMC was 3rd in sales rank of all U.S. car brands. When Robney resigned, the board of directors appointed Abernethy. It's important to note that this was the first time AMC had a separate position as president from chairman. So Abernethy wasn't a chairperson or on the board. Abernethy wanted to shed the econo car appearance that AMC had at this point in time and really thought AMC could go toe-to-toe with Ford, Chevy, and Plymouth if they could just change their image. Abernethy was responsible for all the different models that took place at AMC. Sensible Spectaculars, which was launched in 1965. He also moved the Ambassador up market. 1967 AMC model lineup. These aren't in any particular order. Rambler American, Rambler Rebel, Ambassador, Marlin. Wagons could be had in American, Rambler Rebel, or Ambassador. The Marlin was designed by Dick Teague and was offered by AMC for 3 years, 1965, 66, and 67. For 65, it was marketed as the Rambler Marlin. For 66, just Marlin, and 67 was AMC Marlin. The original Rambler Marlin was based on the 1964 Rambler concept car, Rambler Tarpon. 65 and 66 are very similar, but before going on, just look at this rear design. Doesn't this rear design look like something else to you? Say like a 65 Charger? Somebody copied! People will say the Marlin is ugly, but in the same sentence say the Dodge Charger is one of the most beautiful cars of the mid-60s. And for what really gets me is that these never took off in value. People didn't like the proportions. The Charger is evenly proportioned. The Marlin has a short front, long rear end thing. So to fix that, AMC redesigned the Marlin in 1967. Just so you're aware, the 65 and 66 ride on the Rambler platform. The 67 is the only one of the trio to be built on the Ambassador platform. The 67 was totally different, which I did not know. I just thought that they took the front clip off the Ambassador and added it to the existing body shell. Oh no, that's not the case. AMC spent $35 million retooling this car for the 1967 model year. The 1967 AMC Marlin was 6.5 inches longer than the outgoing 66 Marlin with more rear seat legroom. The car also gained 350 pounds over the 66 Marlin. So let's compare 66 on top, 67 on the bottom, starting in the front. All of it is completely different, but there are some similarities between these two. The fastback roofline, I will say the 67's is longer. Both have hood ornaments, both have quad lights, both are made by AMC. Headlights are totally different, stacked on the 67 versus horizontal on the 66. Grills, bumpers, marker lights, marker light shapes, and placements, they're all totally different. The 66 has a rounder appearance, whereas the 67 is more edgy. Look at how the bumper wraps around on both of them, but notice the protrusion on the 67 just aft of where it wraps around. Moving to the side profile, just look at how different these two are. The 66 has way more lines in the belt line region. The 67 is more smooth. The 67 has trim over the wheel wells. Also, the wheel wells are different shaped. The 66 has rocker trim that the 67 doesn't have. Gas doors are different. Look at the roof line. The vent windows are shaped different with smaller vent windows on the 67. They also look swept back. Mirrors are different. Also different on the 67, doesn't have the boomerang trim around the rear of the fastback portion that the 66 has. Instead is completely smooth, fancier wheels on the 67, bigger rear reflectors on the 67. Moving to the rear, 67 appears to be lower than the 66. It also appears to be a little bit wider. The fastback portion goes all the way to the bumpers on the 67. The 67 is also smoother than the 66. 66 has Marlin medallion on the trunk lid that is not found on the 67. Light grills on the 67. Bumpers are different between these two. Moving inside to take a look at the interior, different steering wheels. Just about everything is moved or changed in some way as well. The 67 has faux wood or fake wood trim. Radio is vertical on the 67. 66 has a traditional dash that goes the whole way across. 67 slants past the gauge cluster. Which one do you like better? Let's talk specs. 201 inches long, 78 inches wide. It rides a wheelbase of 118 inches. It weighs 3,280 pounds. Price, $2,670, which is equivalent to you spending $24,543.70 in the year 2023. Total 1967 AMC production was 302,945 units, of which 2,545 were AMC Marlin. So just think about that for a second. AMC spent $35 million or $321,733,832.34 in the year 2023 to sell 2,545 cars. Why they did not produce this in 68 is beyond me. Maybe they didn't want to crowd out the Javelin because that's what came next, but it just doesn't make sense. And in my opinion, they didn't market the Marlin the way they should have. If they marketed it right, they probably would have sold a whole lot more. Moving on to engines, which there were 3 engines in a couple different flavors. 232 cubic inch displacement, inline 6, 3.8 liters. It could be had with a single barrel or a 2-barrel carburetor. Single produced 145 horsepower. The 2-barrel carburetor got 155 horsepower, 4,400 RPM, 215 pound-feet of torque at 1,600 RPM with a bore of 3.75 inches and a stroke of 3.5 inches. Compression was 8.5 to 1. This engine was legendary, featured 7 main bearings. All of the engines are going to be backed with a 4-speed manual transmission. This one does 0 to 60 in 12.1 seconds, theoretical top speed of 103 miles per hour, while achieving an average fuel consumption rating of 19.2 miles to the gallon. These numbers are all just a jumping off point. It doesn't say if the engines were broken in when these numbers were made, so these engines might go a little faster, they might get a little bit better gas mileage, just a jumping off point. Moving on to the middle option, 290 cubic inch displacement, V8, 4.8 liters. It's good for 200 horsepower, 4,700 RPM, 285 pound-feet of torque at 2,200 RPM, with a bore of 3.7 inches and a stroke of 3.3 inches. Compression is 8.7 to 1. 5 main bearings. It does 0 to 60 with a 4-speed manual transmission in 9 seconds. Theoretical top speed 116 miles per hour. Average fuel consumption 14.5 miles to the gallon. Moving on to the biggest and baddest engine offered in the Marlin was the 343 cubic inch displacement V8. 5.6 liters. It was offered in 2-barrel and 4-barrel. The 2-barrel got 235 horsepower. The 4-barrel got 280 horsepower, 4,800 RPM, 345 to 365 pound-feet of torque at 3,000 RPM, with a bore of 4.08 inches and a stroke of 3.28 inches. 5 main bearings, 0 to 60, 7 seconds, theoretical top speed 127 miles per hour, average fuel economy is anywhere around 12.4 miles to the gallon. 3 transmission options on offer. You had the 3-speed manual, 4-speed manual, which was technically a 3-speed with overdrive, and a 3-speed automatic called the Flash-O-Matic. Let's talk styling. Notice the stacked lights. Also, just look at how far they sit in.
Last weekend he works now at Monroe.
Look at these bumpers. Look at look at how this comes up to like a ridge.
I'm gonna put dual exhaust on it. That's the only thing I'm gonna do to it. And
check out the grill. Notice it wraps around. Running lights.
My dad wanted this car preserved. I knew he'd do this. I knew his dad real well. His dad was.
Look at how this bevels.
He was just a cool guy. He was a car guy.
I always liked the 67. My son actually likes the 65 and 67.
Just look at how this protrudes out.
Yeah, that 65 was here.
Look at how this flares. Also check out how this bevels down.
That's got a solid drive shaft, all that. It's a whole different concept. Getting out of it. Good seeing you, man. Nice to see you too. Nice to meet you. Yeah, good being here. Yeah.
This car does have roof rails that run the length of the car. Also check out the top. It's got this vinyl top, but it's not just the top. It comes and continues down the rear. Super interesting. This one doesn't have the Marlin insignia that is found on the 65 and 66. I absolutely love this window design. Look at how these rear wheel wells flare out as well. I love these side markers. These might actually be lights. Just take a look at how this is all designed. Also, how it curves back in ever so slightly. Nice Marlin badge there. Textured lights. Just look at how these bumpers are designed. There's a lot going on. Look how that is. The gas filler doors here. Check out these door handles. Man, just look at this door panel. Look how nice this is. This is just simulated wood up here, but just look at all the colors contrasting. Armrest, door handle to get out, window crank for the big window. This one has vent windows as well as a toggle switch, joy style switch for the mirror. But just look at how these windows are all trimmed out. Also look at curves. Coming down inside the pedal box down here. Here's what over the hood looks like. Here's what first person over the hood looks like. Above there are sun visors, as well as a rear view mirror with daytime nighttime feature. And another sun visor over there. Let's take a quick gander at the pillar to glass ratio. That's what visibility looks like out the rear from the front seat. It's a really interesting view. Just take a look at this interior. On to the button switches and knobs, starting on the left and moving right. Cruise control, brake release, hood release, clock, climate control, weather eye, 3 sliders, temperature, air, defrost, headlights, wipers, speedometer. Notice that the speedometer goes up to 100 in the same way. 110, 120 are flipped so you can see them. High beam indicator, odometer, left turn signal indicator. There is a series of idiot lights in between the 2 gauge clusters. In the second gauge pod is the gasoline gauge, coolant temperature, right turn signal indicator. Drive modes read park, reverse, neutral, 2, D for drive, 1 low. Vertical radio, radio selector, tone, key, lighter, vibratone. I'm not entirely sure what this does. I don't know if it's like reverb, ashtray, tissue box, which was an accessory, and glove box. The owner was telling me about all these little trinkets. This car came from a dealership. All this stuff doesn't exist. Look at all these pins. There's something to cut another key. It's all very, very nice, interesting things. I apologize. We did not get in the back seat of this car or show how the rear window worked or any of that stuff or folded down the seats. The guy wanted to leave the car show and he stuck around for us. On the positive side, in my opinion, these are awesome. And that goes for all of the Marlins. I would much rather have this over a Dodge Charger. I am definitely in that camp. And if you don't know me by now, I am not mainstream. I'm a firm believer in being different. These are rare. Not sure how many survived, but I've heard that it's around 1,000. But don't quote me on that. I think these look great. I dig all 3 gears. Smooth V8 performance. All the seats in the front fold down into a bed, which is a great feature. Interiors are very different and unique. Vertical radio. Inside, hood release. Against it. These are rare. Some don't even know that it exists. Parts are getting hard to find. Appreciation potential is Like, don't get me wrong. These cars are really cool, but only the die-hard AMC fans even know that this car exists. Side note, if they would have kept it around for a little bit longer and had a 390 V8, just think of what it could have been. Anyway, on to Would You Rather. 2 scenarios today. In the first scenario, would you rather have a 1967 Dodge Charger or 1967 AMC Marlin or 1968 Ford Torino? I'm going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free, pause the video. On to the second scenario, 1965 Rambler Marlin or 1966 Marlin or 1967 AMC Marlin. Once again, going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free, pause the video. Now it's time for Name That Tune. First person to get both the name of the band and the song title correctly in the comment section will have their comment pinned to the top of it. Thank you all so much for coming out and watching this. If you'd like to get in touch with me, shoot me a comment in the comment section below. I read and answer all comments posted because this is not just a car channel. This is a car community that I am very much a part of. We also have a Facebook group that correlates with this YouTube channel. I call it the After Party. It gives you the opportunity to share your rides, stories, experiences, anything car related. If you're interested in that, the link will be in the description below. If you want to send me more of an intimate, one-on-one kind of conversation, send me an email. That will also be linked in the description below. Just know, I really do appreciate you guys. I love reading the comments. I love the stories. The stories are like one of my favorite aspects about this channel. I appreciate all of these stories, all the information, everything that you guys bring. I just wanted you guys to know that. And until next time, toodaloo! But you're my teenage queen, now my queen. You're the prettiest, loveliest girl that I've ever seen.